I remember the day I discovered my wife's infidelity as if it were burned into my memory. It was a Saturday morning, the kind where the sun shines through the window, casting a warm glow in our living room. I had just returned from a quick grocery run, carrying a couple of bags filled with our usual weekend treats. As I walked in, the sight of her sitting on the couch, phone in hand, seemed normal at first. But there was something off about her demeanor. She was too quiet, her eyes darting away from mine as if she were hiding something. It wasn't until I noticed the messages on her phone that my heart dropped. I caught a glimpse of a name that sent ice water coursing through my veins. Marco, the tailor. The man who had designed her wedding dress, the very dress I had watched her try on with a mix of excitement and love. My mind raced. I had trusted this man to help create a symbol of our love, and here he was, sullying it with his betrayal. "Who is Marco?" I asked, the question barely escaping my lips before I felt the heat. Anger rising within me. I watched as her face paled, the color draining from her cheeks. She hesitated, and in that moment I knew that she had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The betrayal felt like a punch to the gut, knocking the wind out of me. I was furious, heartbroken, and utterly confused all at once. "He's just a friend," she stammered, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. "We've been working on some adjustments for the dress." "Adjustments?" I echoed, my voice rising. "Is that what you call it now? Because the last time I checked, your friend was the one who took you into a fitting room and had you undress." The confrontation spiraled from there, words flying back and forth like daggers. I wanted to scream, to make her feel the pain that was swelling inside me. How could she do this? I thought of our wedding day, how beautiful she looked in that dress, how we promised each other forever in front of family and friends. Those memories, once a source of joy, now twisted into reminders of her betrayal. "I didn't mean for happen," she said, tears streaming down her face. "It was just a mistake." A mistake. I couldn't comprehend how she could downplay it so easily. This wasn't just a slip-up, this was a breach of trust, a desecration of everything we had built together. My mind was racing, a whirlwind of anger and hurt. I had never felt so alone, even with her sitting right there before me. I finally managed to gather my thoughts enough to say, "I can't do this anymore. This isn't the life I signed up for." I could see the realization dawning on her face, the recognition that our marriage was crumbling before her. As I walked away, I felt a mixture of relief and despair. I had made a decision, but it was one that would haunt me for a long time. The days that followed were a blur. I found myself replaying every moment from our wedding day, the laughter, the joy, the promises made under the soft glow of fairy lights. Now, those memories felt tainted, marred by visions of her with Marco. I was engulfed in emotional turmoil, battling waves of anger and sadness. I felt like a fool, a man betrayed by the one person I had trusted most in the world. The thought of filing for divorce began to take root in my mind. I had to reclaim my dignity, my sense of self-worth. As I sat in our living room, now void of laughter and warmth, I began to draft the papers. It was a painful process, but I felt it was the only way forward. I had to show her that her actions had consequences. I knew I would have to face her again, and when I did, the tension in the air was palpable. I could see the fear in her eyes, the uncertainty of what was to come, but I was resolute. I would not let her walk away unscathed. I had a plan forming in my mind, one that would ensure she remembered this betrayal for the rest of her life. The emotional aftermath of discovering my wife's affair was like being caught in a storm without shelter. I felt lost, tossed around by waves of anger, sadness, and confusion. It was a roller coaster I couldn't get off. Each day blurred into the next, and I found myself replaying the moment of confrontation over and over in my mind. I could hear her voice, the way she tried to brush off her betrayal, and it made my blood boil. The first few nights were the hardest. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, haunted by memories of our wedding day. I could still see her radiant smile as she walked down the aisle, the soft music playing in the background, the way I felt like the luckiest man alive. Now that image was tainted, corrupted by the knowledge that she had shared intimate moments with another man, the very man who had crafted the dress that symbolized our love. I tried to distract myself. I threw myself into work, spending long hours at the office, hoping that the mundane tasks would help me forget. But nothing worked. Every time I saw a wedding-related post on social media or heard a couple discussing their plans, I felt a pang of bitterness. It was as if the world was mocking me, reminding me of what I had lost. Friends reached out, concerned about my well-being. They noticed my absence from gatherings, my lack of enthusiasm in conversations. I could see the pity in their eyes when I finally broke down and told them what happened. "I just can't believe she would do this to me," I confessed to one close friend over beers one night. "I thought we had something real." "Dude, you deserve better," he replied, his voice steady. "You can't let her walk all over you. If she can betray you like this, what else is she capable of?" His words struck a chord. I realized that I had to take action. The decision to file for divorce solidified in my mind like a stone sinking in water. It wasn't just about ending our marriage. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity. I didn't want to be the man who sat back and accepted betrayal without consequence. I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions. As I drafted the divorce papers, I felt a strange sense of empowerment. I was taking control of my life again, standing up for myself. I had spent years building a life with her, and it was time to dismantle everything she had shattered. But as I filled out the forms, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that accompanied this decision. The thought of facing her again, of seeing her in that wedding dress, made my stomach turn. That dress. It had once represented everything beautiful about our relationship, and now it felt like a mockery. I wanted her to wear it to court. The very garment that had once brought us joy would now serve as a symbol of her betrayal. I envisioned the moment she would walk into the courtroom, her face pale with shame, and I felt a surge of satisfaction at the thought. This was my revenge, my way of making her understand the gravity of her mistake. As the court date approached, I found myself oscillating between anticipation and anxiety. I could picture her reaction when I insisted she wear the wedding dress, and it thrilled me. I imagined her embarrassment, the whispers from the courtroom spectators as she walked down the aisle of justice in the very dress meant for our love. It felt fitting, poetic even, that she would wear the symbol of her infidelity in front of a judge. I prepared myself for the confrontation. I rehearsed what I would say, how I would present my case. I wanted to remain composed, but I also wanted to convey the depth of my hurt. I needed her to understand that this was not just about the dress. It was about the trust she had shattered, the vows she had broken. I wanted her to feel the weight of her decisions, to realize that they had consequences that extended far beyond our marriage. In the days leading up to the hearing, I found myself reflecting on our relationship, on the moments that had brought us joy and the ones that had led us to this point. I thought of the laughter we shared, the dreams we had built together, and the future I had envisioned. It was all gone, swept away by her betrayal. As I sat in my car outside the courthouse on the day of the hearing, I took a deep breath. I felt a mix of dread and determination. I was ready to face her, to confront the woman I had loved and lost. I was ready to reclaim my life, and if that meant watching her wear the very dress that symbolized our love, then so be it. The day of the court hearing arrived with a heavy sense of inevitability. As I parked my car outside the courthouse, I felt a knot of anxiety twist in my stomach. The imposing building loomed before me, a stark reminder of the reality I was about to confront. This was it, the culmination of my heartbreak, anger, and resolve. I stepped out, taking a moment to gather my thoughts before entering the building. Inside, the atmosphere was tense, a mixture of nervous energy and solemnity. I could see other couples, some holding hands, others exchanging cold glares, each wrestling with their own battles. My heart raced as I thought of what lay ahead. I was here to end a chapter of my life, but it felt more like an execution than a closure. I took my seat in the waiting area, the cold plastic of the chair grounding me in the moment. The minutes felt like hours as I waited for my name to be called. I glanced at the clock, counting down the time until I would have to face her. I wondered how she was feeling, whether she was nervous, ashamed, or indifferent. When the court officer finally called my name, I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest. I walked into the courtroom, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the silent room. I could feel the eyes of the spectators on me, their curiosity palpable. I took my place at the plaintiff's table, trying to project confidence despite the turmoil inside. A few moments later she entered, and my breath caught in my throat. There she was, wearing the wedding dress, the very dress that had once symbolized our love. It was stunning, just as I remembered, but now it felt like a cruel joke. The sight of her in that dress sent a jolt of anger through me. She looked beautiful, but the beauty was overshadowed by the betrayal it represented. Her eyes met mine for a brief moment, and I saw a flicker of vulnerability. Was she regretting her choices? Or was she simply embarrassed to be wearing the very symbol of our broken vows? I couldn't tell. I felt a rush of emotions, anger, pity, and a strange sense of satisfaction. This was my plan, and I was determined to see it through. The judge entered, and the courtroom fell silent. The proceedings began, and as the judge asked for the reason for the divorce, I could feel my heart pounding in my ears. I took a deep breath, ready to present my case. I recounted the events leading up to this moment, the discovery of her affair, and the emotional devastation that had followed. I tried to remain composed, but my voice trembled as I spoke. I never thought I would be standing here, filing for divorce from the woman I loved. I said, my words heavy with emotion. I trusted her, and she betrayed that trust in the most profound way. She had an affair with the man who made her wedding dress, the very dress that symbolizes our vows. I want her to wear it today because it serves as a reminder of the promises she broke. There was a murmur in the courtroom, and I could see the judge's eyebrows raise in surprise. I continued, this isn't just about a dress. It's about the trust that was shattered, the love that was thrown away for a fleeting moment of passion. I want her to understand the weight of her actions. As I spoke, I could feel her eyes on me, and I wondered what she was thinking. Was she feeling remorse? Did she realize the magnitude of what she had done? I could see her fidgeting in her seat, her fingers nervously twisting the fabric of the dress. It was a small comfort to know that she was uncomfortable, that she was feeling the consequences of her choices. The judge listened intently, then turned to her. "Do you have any response to these claims?" he asked, his tone firm. She hesitated, and I could see the conflict on her face. I I made a mistake," she finally said, her voice shaky. "It was a moment of weakness. I never meant to hurt him. A moment of weakness." I interjected, unable to contain my anger. "You think that justifies what you did? You made a choice, and it wasn't just a mistake. It was a betrayal of everything we built together." The tension in the room thickened as I felt the weight of my words hanging in the air. I was unflinching now, fueled by the pain she had caused me. The judge nodded, acknowledging the emotional charge of the moment. As the hearing continued, I could see the expressions on the faces of the spectators. Some looked sympathetic, others seemed judgmental. I didn't care. I was here to reclaim my power, to show her that her actions had consequences. The proceedings dragged on, and I felt the weight of the moment pressing down on me. I knew I was doing the right thing, but it was still hard to reconcile the love I once felt with the anger that consumed me. I could only hope that this experience would bring me some closure, some sense of resolution to this painful chapter of my life. As we approached the end of the hearing, I took one last look at her in that wedding dress. It was a symbol of everything I had lost, but also a reminder of the strength I was regaining. I was ready to move forward, ready to leave this pain behind. The courtroom proceedings continued, and I could feel the tension rising. The judge had heard enough to understand the gravity of our situation, yet I knew that the final decision was still ahead. As I sat there, my mind raced with thoughts about the future. What would my life look like after this? Would I ever be able to trust again? Would I ever find love that felt real after this betrayal? When it was finally time for the judge to deliberate, I felt a strange mixture of anticipation and dread. The judge excused himself to an adjoining chamber, leaving us in a charged silence. I turned to face my wife, still clad in that bridal gown, and for a moment our eyes locked. I could see the tears brimming in her eyes, and I felt a flicker of empathy, but it was quickly snuffed out by the anger that flared within me. "Do you realize how much you've hurt me?" I asked, my voice low but firm. "You think this dress makes you look beautiful, but all I see is the woman who threw away our marriage for a fling." She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Instead, she sat there, blinking back tears, and I felt a rush of satisfaction. This was my moment. I had finally taken control. I had called her out on her betrayal, and now she had to sit in the consequences of her actions. After what felt like an eternity, the judge returned to his seat, and I could feel the collective breath of the courtroom being held. He began to read his ruling, and I leaned forward, my heart racing. In light of the evidence presented and the circumstances surrounding this case, I find that the marriage is irretrievably broken. I grant the divorce. The words echoed in my mind, and a wave of relief washed over me. It was official. I was free. But as the gravity of the situation settled in, I realized that freedom also came with a heavy price. I would have to rebuild my life from the ground up, and that thought was both daunting and liberating. The judge continued, addressing the terms of the divorce, but I barely heard him. I was lost in my thoughts, reflecting on everything that had led us to this point. I had never imagined that my life would take such a drastic turn, that I would be sitting in a courtroom watching the end of my marriage unfold before me. Then the judge turned to her. "I want to address you directly. You need to understand the impact of your actions. Marriages require trust, commitment, and respect. You violated that trust, not just with your husband, but with the very vows you took. I hope you take this as a lesson moving forward." Her face flushed with embarrassment, and I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. This was the closure I needed. The judge's words were not just a reprimand. They were a reminder that actions have consequences, and I hoped she would carry that lesson with her. As the judge wrapped up the hearing, I felt a sense of finality wash over me. I was no longer bound to her by the vows we had exchanged. I was free to start anew, to find my path away from the pain and betrayal. I glanced at her one last time, still in that wedding dress, and I felt a mix of pity and resolve. She would have to face the reality of her choices alone now. Once the ruling was made, the courtroom began to empty, and I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I stood up, ready to leave, but I hesitated. I turned back to her, my heart heavy with a mix of emotions. "I hope you find what you're looking for, even if it's not with me," I said, my voice steady. "But remember, you made this choice and you'll have to live with it." She nodded, tears streaming down her face, and I walked away. The weight that had been pressing on my chest began to lift, and with each step I felt a little lighter. I was reclaiming my life, my identity, and my future. As I stepped out of the courthouse, the sun shone brightly, and I took a deep breath of fresh air. I was ready to face the world again. The pain of betrayal was still fresh, but I knew that with time it would fade. I had a long journey ahead, but I was determined to navigate it with strength and resilience. In the weeks that followed, I focused on healing. I surrounded myself with supportive friends and family, leaned on their love and encouragement, and began to rediscover who I was outside of my marriage. I took up new hobbies, explored my city, and even started to reconnect with old friends I had lost touch with over the years. But there was still a lingering question in my mind. Would I ever be able to trust? Again, the thought haunted me, but I pushed it aside. I had to take things one day at a time. I was determined to learn from this experience, to grow stronger, and to ensure that I never found myself in such a vulnerable position again. As I moved forward, I promised myself I would be more cautious in my next relationship. I would guard my heart, but I wouldn't let fear dictate my future. I would embrace love again when the time was right, but I would do so with eyes wide open. The weeks turned into months, and life began to settle into a new normal. The initial shock of my divorce had worn off, replaced by a sense of empowerment. I was learning to navigate the world as a single man, rediscovering my passions and reconnecting with friends. I focused on rebuilding my life, piece by piece, and slowly, I felt the weight of betrayal lift from my shoulders. But even as I moved forward, the memories of my marriage lingered. I often found myself reflecting on the good times, our adventures, the laughter, the plans we had made. It was difficult to reconcile those moments with the betrayal that had shattered everything. I had loved her deeply, and the wound was still fresh, even if it was healing. One evening, as I sat in my favorite coffee shop, I overheard a couple discussing their wedding plans. Their excitement and joy were palpable, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of envy. I remembered the feelings I had when I was planning my own wedding, the hope, the dreams for the future. But now those feelings were tainted, overshadowed by the memories of my ex-wife in that wedding dress, standing before a judge instead of an altar. I shook my head, trying to dispel the thoughts. I had to focus on the present, not dwell on the past. I picked up my phone and opened a dating app, hesitant but curious. I had avoided dating since the divorce, afraid of being hurt again. But I knew I couldn't let fear control my life. If I wanted to find love again, I needed to take that leap. As I swiped through profiles, I felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. I connected with a few women, exchanged messages, and even set up a couple of casual dates. Each interaction was a step towards healing, a chance to open my heart again. I found myself laughing and enjoying the company of others, slowly rediscovering the joy of connection. One particular date stood out. I met Maya, a vibrant woman with a contagious laugh and a zest for life. We clicked instantly, sharing stories and dreams over dinner. As the night wore on, I felt a warmth spreading in my chest, a feeling I hadn't experienced in a long time. For the first time since my divorce, I felt a glimmer of hope that love could be possible again. Maya was kind and understanding, and she didn't push me to share more about my past than I was comfortable with. I appreciated her patience, and as we continued to see each other, I started to let my guard down. We explored the city together, went hiking, and shared late-night conversations filled with laughter and connection. It felt good to be seen and appreciated again. But even as I enjoyed our time together, I couldn't shake the memories of my marriage. I found myself comparing moments with Maya to those I had shared with my ex-wife. I worried that I would never be able to fully commit to someone again, that the shadow of my past would always loom over me. One evening, after a particularly wonderful date, I opened up to Maya about my divorce. I told her how it had affected me, how I struggled with trust and vulnerability. To my surprise, she listened intently and offered her understanding. "It's okay to be cautious," she said softly. "But don't let your past dictate your future. You deserve to be happy." Her words resonated deeply with me. I realized that I had been holding onto my pain as a shield, preventing myself from fully engaging in this new relationship. I had to let go of the fear that had been my constant companion since the betrayal. I had to trust again, even if it felt risky. As the weeks passed, I made a conscious effort to be present with Maya. I allowed myself to feel the joy of our connection without the weight of my past dragging me down. I learned to appreciate the little moments, cooking dinner together, sharing stories, and simply enjoying each other's company. But just as I began to feel comfortable, the ghosts of my past reared their ugly heads. One day I received a message from my ex-wife. My heart raced as I read her words, a mixture of anger and confusion flooding my senses. She wanted to talk, to explain herself, to seek closure. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to remind her of the pain she had caused me, but another part of me was curious. What could she possibly say that would change anything? I debated for days about whether to respond. I discussed it with Maya, who encouraged me to handle it in a way that felt right for me. "You don't owe her anything," she said. "But if you think it will help you find closure, then maybe it's worth considering." After much contemplation, I decided to meet her. I needed to confront the past head-on, to find my own closure. I arranged to meet her at a neutral location, a small park where we could talk without the weight of our old life hanging over us. When I arrived, I saw her sitting on a bench, the sunlight filtering through the trees. She looked different, more vulnerable perhaps. As I approached, I felt a mix of emotions: anger, sadness, and a strange sense of compassion. This was the woman I had loved, the woman who had broken my heart. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," she said quietly, her voice trembling slightly. I took a deep breath and nodded. "Let's just get this over with." As we began to talk, I found myself expressing everything I had held inside: the pain, the betrayal, the anger. I told her how her actions had shattered my trust and changed me. She listened, tears streaming down her face, and for the first time I saw genuine remorse in her eyes. "I'm so sorry for what I did," she said, her voice breaking. I never meant to hurt you. I was foolish and selfish." I wanted to scream at her to tell her how her selfishness had ruined my life, but instead I took a deep breath and replied, "I don't need your apologies. What's done is done. I just need to move on." And in that moment, I realized that I had finally found my closure. I didn't need her forgiveness, and I didn't need her to absolve herself of her guilt. I had already started to rebuild my life, and I was ready to close that chapter for good. As we parted ways, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I had faced the past, confronted the pain, and emerged stronger. I was ready to embrace my future with Maya, to love again without fear. The days following my meeting with my ex-wife were transformative. I felt a renewed sense of purpose and clarity. I had faced my past, confronted the pain, and emerged with a stronger resolve to embrace my future. The closure I had sought was finally within my grasp, allowing me to focus on the present and the possibilities ahead. Maya and I continued to grow closer. I found joy in the little things, sharing meals, going on spontaneous adventures, and simply enjoying each other's company. With each passing day, I felt more comfortable allowing myself to be vulnerable around her. I realized that I had been holding back, afraid of getting hurt again, but Maya's kindness and understanding encouraged me to let my walls down. One evening, as we sat on the porch of my apartment, watching the sunset, I turned to her and said, "I've really enjoyed getting to know you. You've helped me heal in ways I didn't think were possible." She smiled softly, her eyes sparkling in the fading light. "I'm glad to hear that. I know it's not easy to move on from something painful, but you're doing it, and that's what matters." Her support meant the world to me. I realized that I was no longer defined by my past or the betrayal that had once consumed me. I was reclaiming my identity, and with Maya by my side, I felt ready to embrace love again. As the weeks passed, I found myself falling for her in a way I hadn't thought possible. I had been so afraid of repeating the mistakes of the past, but Maya was different. She was patient, open, and honest, and I began to trust her with my heart. One night as we stargazed in my backyard, I felt a surge of emotion. I turned to her, my heart racing. "Maya, I know it's still early, but I can't help but feel that you're someone special to me. I want to explore this with you to see where it leads." She looked at me, her expression serious yet warm. "I feel the same way. I want to build something real with you, but I understand that it will take time. I'm here for it no matter what." Her words filled me with hope. I realized that love didn't have to be perfect. It just had to be real. I was ready to embrace that love, to let go of the fear that had held me back for so long. As we continued to date, I introduced Maya to my friends and family. Their support and acceptance made it easier for me to let go of the past. I could see the warmth in their eyes as they welcomed her into my life, and it felt good to share this new chapter with the people I loved. Months later, as the holiday season approached, I found myself reflecting on how far I had come. I was no longer the broken man who had walked out of that courtroom. I was stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace the future. One evening, while decorating a Christmas tree together, I turned to Maya and took her hands in mine. "I want to make this a holiday to remember," I said, my heart racing. "I want us to make memories together, not just for this season, but for all the seasons to come." Her eyes widened, and I could see the joy radiating from her. "Are you serious?" she asked, her voice filled with excitement. I nodded, feeling a rush of emotion. "Yes, I want to build a life with you. I want to take the next step in our relationship. Let's create our own traditions, our own story." Tears of happiness welled in her eyes, and she nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, I want that too." In that moment, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had finally moved past the pain and betrayal of my past. I had learned valuable lessons about love, trust, and resilience. I understood that while the scars of my previous relationship would always be a part of me, they no longer defined who I was or who I could become. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Maya and I continued to grow together. We navigated challenges, celebrated achievements, and found joy in the everyday moments. I learned that love is not just about the grand gestures, it's about the small, meaningful moments that build a life together. Looking back, I realized that my journey had shaped me into a stronger person. I had faced betrayal and heartbreak, but I had also found the courage to love again. I had learned to trust, not only in others but also in myself. I was ready to embrace the future with open arms. As the new year approached, I felt a renewed sense of hope and excitement. I knew that whatever lay ahead, I was prepared to face it head-on. I had learned that life is unpredictable, but it's also filled with beautiful possibilities. With Maya by my side, I felt ready to take on the world. Together, we would build a future filled with love, laughter, and adventure. I was no longer the man who had been betrayed. I was a man who had reclaimed his life and his heart. And as I stood there, looking forward to all that was to come, I knew that I had finally found my way home.